26, 2012, meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call roll?
Ms. Aldersley is excused. Mr. Howland? Here. Mr. John Lightfoot? Here. Chairman Rocco?
Here.
Mr. Yolovich? Here.
Is there anyone signed up for public forum?
There is not.
Is there anyone that's present that would like to speak before this committee? Okay, tonight we have no things to come before this committee, so we've got a couple presentations. One by, I'd like to introduce Kate Bennett. She's the Executive Director of the Rochester Museum and Science Center, and she's here to give us a presentation on the Museum and Science Center. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I have given you each 2 free passes to the Museum and Science Center so you can see what we've been doing over the last year and get an opportunity to come. The passes are good through June 30th. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. I'm here first to say thank you to everyone in the county legislature and to the county government that makes it possible for us to have a substantial grant from the county, helps us take care of the objects we hold in trust for the community. If you remember the story that I've told you in the past, there's some new faces here, so I want to make sure you know this story as well. We were originally a city agency. Until 1968, the city, we were under the city and were funded by the city. The city ran into some hard times in the 60s and asked the county to take over the responsibility of the museum. And at that time, in 1968, the county was paying for 77% of our budget, and we were getting funding of far more than $2 million from the county. Today, we receive 17% of our funding from the county, and it is $900,000. Now, with that money, we do 2 very basic things. We take care of the objects that we hold in trust for the community. So we have some wonderful objects that tell the story of Rochester's great past and the corporate past, the various companies, the great people who lived in Rochester. We have Rattlesnake Pete's rattlesnake outfit. That's really cool. And you should all come see it. So taking care of the collections is one piece of it, and teaching our kids is another piece of it. And it's a really important piece. So let me just take a couple of minutes to go over the fact that we're 100 years old. We appreciate it. We wouldn't be where we are today unless we had a lot of community support. You've seen on the outside of the museum there are things changing. We have a new art walk piece, which means we've partnered with the Memorial Art Gallery and the wonderful people on University Avenue, and we're becoming a walking community, which will be good for the future of all of us. We are on the inside focusing on a heightened visitor experience, making sure that we're helping people learn the basics of science, technology, engineering, and math. We think it's really important. It's not just for the people who are going to major in those areas, but for all of us who have to make good informed decisions as citizens. Because if we don't learn about science, how will we actually understand the things that are happening and the things that we must vote on? You know, 2 things that have very great science behind them right now that are being looked at in Albany are fracking and global climate change. What kind of effects do these 2 kinds of things have? Science has something to inform us about this. Technology has ways to help us keep the things that we do safe and make sure that our water supply stays safe, the things that we really care about here. We're making some plans for our future. We want to make sure that our visitors enjoy the experience, and so you might have seen our plans to connect the museum and the planetarium. and some of those as we recreate exhibits on our third floor with our entrepreneurial exhibits and all of that. But most of all, we want to be fun because people want to come to fun, entertaining places. Next year, we're going to be opening an electricity theater. That would be really cool opportunity for people to learn about electricity in a big way. Other things that we're doing next year is we're creating a construction exhibit, so people can learn about all the careers in construction. We think that's really good for the kids in the city and in the county to learn about how many great jobs and career opportunities there are. We're always looking at what is the ways that we can help our citizens learn what they might go on to. Right now, we have a Tyrannosaurus Rex exhibit. We have a very important exhibit coming in January that's been funded by the Rochester Area Community Foundation. It's called Race, Are We So Different? And our concept is that it's a great exhibit experience, but we're together with the community, ABC, and many other organizations in the community working to cause conversations so that we can have our diverse community working together in a beneficial way. So I think that this is real life-changing kinds of opportunities that we're bringing to the museum. And your passes that I've given you, if there's anybody who hasn't gotten a pass, I'll make sure that I give you one on the way out. But there are three things we're focusing on, and then I'll conclude. One thing is we're building futures in science, technology, engineering, and math through fun experiences. Two, we're providing the community a gathering place so that visitors can participate in shared learning. And three, we're working on boosting the local economy. Tourism is important to us, and so people who come to visit for the day, overnight, or for the weekend, you know that we have great family opportunities in Rochester. We're one of them, and we are working diligently to make sure that people come, stay, enjoy, and come back because it's very good for our economy. So I'm happy to take questions. I hope I haven't gone on too long.
Any questions from the floor? President Adair?
Just a comment. First off, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I would just like to say that Kate and her staff over there do a marvelous job at the museum, and I'm particularly happy to see that she comes before Planning and Economic Development Committee because of the fact, and you heard it tonight in what she was speaking about. Number one is that they believe that they are part of that economic engine that drives Monroe County and Rochester, and I think that that's absolutely true because of the high standards they have over there at the museum. The second one is that I'm really particularly pleased that we're doing something about the trades and working with in letting kids see that. I think that's an important part that we sorely need. I know that MCC came in and gave a presentation to us a couple of months ago on basically the same thing where MCC is going to be training people, going to businesses and asking them how they can train people to be ready for this. And I believe that this is just a way of taking young kids and show the positive spin to having these type of jobs and all that. So I commend them, Kate. Thank you for the job you do, and thank your staff also.
Well, thank you so much.
Any further questions? Well, thank you so much for your presentation, and I look forward to attending the museum.
Thank you, and come join us. Did anybody not get passes who wants? Over there, I may give some, and over here to the press. Do you mind if I go over here for a minute?
Our next presentation will be by Scott Adair, Chief Financial Officer, who is here to present the 2013 proposed Monroe County budget.
Thank you, Chairman Rockow. This may take me longer to use technology than it will to actually do the presentation, so I apologize in advance for that. This evening, we are pleased to present to you a brief presentation on the 2013 proposed budget by our county executive. We'll get better as time goes by. The proposed 2013 county budget is balanced. It maintains our property tax rate at the flat level of $8.99 per thousand. It complies both with the 2007 County Taxpayer Protection Act passed by this body and also the state's property tax cap. The comparable portions of the county's operating budget for 2013 to 2012 are up approximately 0.6%. One of the things that we will get into talking to much more in depth during our Human Services Committee meeting as well as our Ways and Means presentation in the public hearing is the second portion of our operating budget, and that is what we will be asking this body to authorize us to do in the December 11th legislature meeting, and that is opt out of our Medicaid swap option. The Medicaid swap option has saved this county over $30 million during the last 4 years of its existence. And now is the time, and we will share that the detailed information as we go through additional committee hearings regarding why now is the time. In addition to that, we have a grants budget. It's down approximately 0.2% from 2013, and primarily that's items that will come before this body throughout the year that will increase appropriations in that area. The grants budget is not impacted by the Planning and Economic Development Committee. I spoke just a few minutes ago about the fact that we complied with the Taxpayer Protection Act. As you can see by this slide, mandated spending is up from 2012 by 8.7%. Non-mandated spending is up 1.6%. That complies with the Taxpayer Protection Act because the CPI for this area for 2013 was flat 2%. Our non-mandated user fee supported items are up 0.5%. Those include things like the hospital, the airport, and our Pure Waters districts. More specifically, getting into the area of planning and economic development, we focus in on the planning department of the county. As you can see, in 2013 budget is relatively flat from 2012. It's up approximately $40,000. This is due to the addition of one FTE in the community development area. This position is fully supported by the community development block grant funding, so there is no additional net county impact. Approximately 44% of this department's appropriations are mandated. And there's a brief description on the slide in front of you to highlight what each of those areas of this planning does. And at this point in time, Chairman, I would be more than willing to answer any questions the committee has regarding the planning department budget for 2013.
Thank you, Mr. Adair. I will now open questions to the floor as long as it pertains to the planning and economic development. Legislator Yolovich.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, you want to sit down first? This will be an easy one. On pages 2.6 and 2.7 of the budget document, the planning department has highlighted jobs created, retained, and people employed. Now, that's very encouraging in numbers that they show. For example, 12,585 jobs through Rochester Works have been created. What I was wondering is the Economic Development Division has also approved several projects that over the next 3 years will create about 2,600 plus jobs and retain another 10,000 plus jobs. Does this include the projects Comida has supported in the community?
Through the chair, that is a real simple question for me to answer because I think I'll turn it over to our director, Judy Seil, to answer.
Told you I was going to give you a softball.
Thank you. Judy Seil, Director of Planning and Development. Oops, there we go. Through the chair, it does include all of our various programs, Comida and Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some questions as I go through, and you can help me, please. Mr. Chairman, through you to the administration, Can you explain to me the difference between the Greater Rochester Sports Authority, the Sports Development Corporation, and the Monroe County Sports Commission?
Sure. Through the chair, the Monroe County Sports Commission is charged with bringing in sporting events to the community, primarily youth-oriented. It adds to the hotel motel tax. They sponsor various events that come into the community, including the Special Olympics, some senior games that have come in, and various other athletic events. The Greater Rochester Sports Authority oversees operation of the Frontier Field. And I'm sorry, your third one that you mentioned?
Sports Development Corporation?
The Sports Commission and the Sports Development Corporation are the same entity.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Thank you. It kind of was a little bit different in the budget. My next question is through you, Mr. Chair. Is the Greater Rochester Sports Authority a subdivision or department of the Planning and Economic Development?
Through the chair, no, it is not.
Through you, through the chairman, to the administration, is the Monroe County Sports Commission a subdivision of the Department of Planning and Economic Development?
No, it's a separate 501c3. Through the chair, no, it is a separate 501c3.
Okay. So both of these are listed in the 2012, or in this budget here, you list on the 2012 accomplishments. But, you're stating that they're not part of necessarily the department.
Through the chair, as the Director of Planning and Development, I do have oversight as the Executive Director of those entities. There are separate boards for each.
Okay, thank you. To you, Mr. Chair, to the administration, does any of these operations with the Rochester Sports Authority or the Commission, do they engage any county employees? To you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, are they paid? Do they pay county employees?
Yes, are they paid? Yes, ma'am.
And through the chair, no.
To you, Mr. Chair, is that done? Is that because that helps us save money? Do we find that by us not hiring or through the county budget, do we find that's beneficial for us by not paying them? If no, why don't we hire them? If you understood that question.
Through the chair, I guess I am going to have to ask you to rephrase that question because I'm not sure I completely followed it.
Okay. So let me back up, Mr. Chair. So the Sports Authority is not a division of the Planning Development, nor is the other commissions. So the county employees are not engaged in the operations of neither one of these, and so, well, I guess that just kind of makes sense. All right, let me move to the next question, Mr. Chairman. I have an interest in the hotel motel tax scheme. How is the distribution of revenue formulated to be equally dispersed amongst activities?
Through the chair, approximately 5 or 6 years ago, it was a decision made by this body through the budgeting process to put in capped amounts for the entities such that you see in the hotel motel tax, such as Visit Rochester, the City of Rochester, the Sports Authority, the county, and the Fair Association.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, when will we revisit that formulated cap, or to find out if it's still just or not? One of the reasons I bring that up is because I think I read in the budget, well, I know I did, that there's an increase of participants, like for the Jeeva Theater, and but there's no increase for funding. So that's an example.
Through the chair, that's a process that we go through annually to look at that and determine based on what we believe the hotel motel tax receipts will be for the upcoming year to determine whether or not we can provide additional funding. It's just so happened that in the past few years there has been no additional funding to be provided to any of those entities at this point in time.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, there to the administration, there is a formula that you have that we use to give out capped amounts to these different types of entities. Will you be will the administration share that with us, that formula, or that helps determine that?
Through the chair, I don't necessarily, a formula would not be a proper way to characterize it.
Okay.
I believe when the decision was made to cap certain entities and the contribution through hotel motel tax was made, it was based on what they were receiving at that particular point in time, and I believe there may have been a small growth factor in there to cover additional expenses as time went on. So there has been, but again, there has been no change to that. But again, each and every year as we go through this process to determine what is the proper amount to fund these organizations, and this is what we've concluded based on what is presented in the budget today.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, through you to the administration, how much does the county subsidize the convention center? Or, I mean, whereabouts, thereabouts?
Through the chair, the county provides funding to the City of Rochester to the total of $1.7 million. That's further broken down between a $905,000, I can't believe I couldn't get that number out, $905,000 that is provided to the Blue Cross Arena and $795,000 that's provided to the convention center.
To you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, I'll just, and to my colleagues, it has been brought to me some time back, some concerns about the convention center, it being subsidized with taxpayer funds, and they're competing against, the private hotels for the banquet service aspect of it. And, they maybe believe that that they're violating, this Adams theory. You have where the invisible hand, which kind of undercuts competition. And I guess what I'm looking for is an analysis of if you think that the fees are being, subsidized, that the convention center is giving out cheaper banquet space than what the hotel across the street or down the street can do, or is it being subsidized so much they can't raise their fees? I mean, is there? Can you share your comments on that, please? Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration.
Through the chair, I'll try to, because I'm not sure I completely followed the question, but the hotel motel tax that is provided to the convention center, the $795,000, effectively one of the reasons for the convention center is to be able to bring in larger groups and conventions into the area that banquet halls could not handle. I believe if you were to review the financial statements of the convention center, you would find out that the smaller banquet is a significantly lower dollar volume of activity for the convention center, and their actual main revenue source is from larger conventions that come into downtown Rochester to support all the hotels in the downtown area, as well as some of the ones in the outlying area based on what time of the day or when the convention is actually happening, and depending on hotel room availability. So I'm not sure that this subsidy that we provide to the city that subsequently then provides it to the convention center is doing what you're suggesting it may be doing. I think that if you were to look around, most of the folks in the Visitors Association believe that the convention center provides a specific, unique service to the convention community for this area, not necessarily taking revenue sources away from the neighboring hotels, what have you, or the smaller banquet centers. That's not what the purpose of the convention center was put here for in downtown Rochester. And I think a thorough review of their financial statements would prove that the fact is that that's a very small portion of their business as they move forward.
Okay, thank you through you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, take a look down the road. Maybe they overstepped the line a little bit. A little competition. It's all hearsay, but some of these people who manage these hotels are been in my ear a little bit, and I would like to get some of the information. Through you, Mr. Chairman, my next question is, why is the amount of the motel tax given to the Monroe County Sports Development Corporation dramatically increasing from $82,500 to $207,500, which is in addition to the $275, which already goes to the Greater Rochester Sports Authority? To the administration, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, I think it's important to point out is Ms. Stiles reported earlier that these are two separate organizations, and the hotel motel tax that's being provided to the Sports Development Corporation has increased this past year. One of the primary reasons is because of the success that this corporation has had in the past few years of bringing new opportunities or new groups into the area as far as sporting events go. And with the upcoming PGA event in August of this year, it was felt as though at this point in time it was appropriate to further put some of our hotel motel tax dollars to work to allow this organization to continue to go out and carry the banner for the community to helpfully continue the progress that we're making as far as attracting sporting events or other activities into Rochester to help provide rooms being occupied by the hotels that you were concerned about with the last question, and to hopefully fill up the restaurants and everything else in the community and make this a much more vibrant downtown as well as overall county goes from that perspective.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, are you suggesting that the next budget will have this $207,000 number will decrease because, or are we anticipating that we'll have two LPGAs or PGAs, or through you, Mr. Chairman?
Through the chair, I'd like to speculate a lot about the 2014 budget, but I won't do that tonight. My anticipation would be that this funding, depending on the results of how the Sports Development Corporation does, could continue into the future, but that's a decision for the next year's county executive's proposed budget as well as this body to determine. But at this point in time, it's going to be, we are recommending that we provide the $207,500 to the Sports Development Corporation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few more questions, if you bear with me.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the administration, what determines the amount of money allocated to the RGRTA under the unallocated expense and revenue? And I can continue with the question, and I'll read it all and just let me. Are we meeting the minimum mandate, or are we above the minimum New York State mandate under Article 2, Section 18-B of the New York State Transportation Law? I mean, it was written in the budget.
Through the chair, we'll cover this in transportation tomorrow night in greater detail, but we are meeting the requirements of the state regarding this funding.
Okay, we'll talk about it in transportation. I thought it was under the planning department. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, General Debt Service. General Debt Service states that these funds are for the Civic Center garage improvements, GIS projects, and county general borrowing. Please could you tell me the Civic Center garage improvements and GIS projects from the 2012 and what is being proposed for the 2013. I'm sure there's some of this stuff you have to just write it down, but maybe a submission to you, Mr. Chairman. If you can give me a highlight of what some of the idea, what some of the 2012 Civic Center garage improvements were and GIS projects, and then what we're proposing for 2013, roughly.
Through the chair, I'll ask for some clarification on that. Just if you could give me a page reference number or something, because I don't believe that's something that we're prepared to answer for planning and economic development. I believe it's for another committee at this point in time, but if you can point me in a direction, I can more than
Page
willing.
121. I'll double check it myself. I may have gotten some committees confused.
I'm going to go along with Financial Officer Adair's comments, and we'll
he's
save
one-
that for another committee.
He's 100% right. It is another committee. My apologies.
Apologies necessary. It's a large document.
My last question, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration. Which development projects will be reaching their sunset date within the next 5 years of their payment in lieu of tax?
Through the chair, I would have to get you that information. We have over 400 projects, so I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but we can get you that information.
Okay, that would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you again. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. You have the June 25th, 2012 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. Is there any other matters to come before this committee? Seeing there is no further business, the November 26, 2012 meeting of the Plan and Economic Development Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will be on December 17, 2012.